Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the professor, and this is the moment of truth. I got a couple of stories for you. February 2021, Arlington, Massachusetts, which is a suburb of Boston. 20-year-old Donovan Johnson was walking home from work when police suddenly ran up on him, guns in his face, attacking him violently, putting their knee on his neck, just like they did George Floyd, despite Mr. Johnson telling the thugs he couldn't breathe. They threw him in a police car to take him to jail. Now, what had young Mr. Johnson done? Nothing. Arlington police had gotten a call from a local hotel about a white man who the hotel staff believed had been involved in stealing televisions. This white man was already known to the thugs in the Arlington PD for prior criminal acts. In fact, this white criminal was so well known to the Arlington police that when one of their officers arrived on the scene, he had a photo of the white suspect on him that he showed to the hotel's front desk clerk. Obviously, the police knew this guy very well. The clerk confirmed that the white man in the picture was indeed the person they had called the police in regards to, and this white man was apparently in one of the rooms. When the Arlington Flatfoots went to the room, the white suspect turned track star and escaped. The police chased after him. So far, no mention of a black person. The police themselves confirmed there was only one person they were looking for, and the police themselves already knew the suspect and even had his picture on them. In other words, what the Arlington police did next wasn't some accident or a case of mistaken identity. Donovan Johnson was walking home from work, and the white suspect ran past him. Then one of the police, in fact, the very same officer who had shown the hotel clerk the photo of the white suspect in the first place, he ran up on Mr. Johnson and told him to get on the ground, and drew his gun on Mr. Johnson. Then the thugs and the Arlington police ignored the white man, and they all jumped on Mr. Johnson instead. The white suspect said he didn't know Mr. Johnson, and since the police were called on the white suspect, there was no reason for them to jump on a black pedestrian. There was absolutely nothing that indicated that Mr. Johnson was involved in any sort of illegality. In fact, nothing that hinted that a black person was involved at all. Police themselves had a photo of the white criminal. They showed it to the hotel staff, so this wasn't some case of mistaken identity. They knew exactly who they were chasing after and who they weren't. And neither the initial calls of the police nor their questioning of the hotel staff ever mentioned more than one suspect. The police were still trying to manufacture a phony case on Mr. Johnson regardless, though. They brought him in handcuffs to the hotel, even though nothing from the staff or their own questioning indicated that a black person was involved or that there was a second suspect. The hotel staff told the police Mr. Johnson had nothing to do with the crime at all, and they didn't even know who he was. The police finally threw Mr. Johnson out of the police car at the hotel, and they ran off as fast as they could. Now there's a federal civil rights lawsuit that's being waged by Mr. Johnson, but what's called for here is personal liability for all the thugs with badges in the Arlington PD who were involved, and personal criminal charges against them. This was not some case of mistaken identity. They knew exactly what they were doing. This was the white supremacists showing one of the, as they see it, fringe benefits of being in the police. And before the white supremacist trolls or anyone else tries the feeble claim that, well, this was some sort of fluke. I mean, what are the chances of that? Well, let me go ahead and give you another incident. Shane Lee Brown was a 23-year-old black motorist. The thugs and the Las Vegas police arrested him after a routine traffic stop for allegedly driving without his lights on. Now, the reason that they arrested him had nothing to do with his lights. In fact, it had nothing to do with Mr. Brown at all. They arrested him because they thought this 23-year-old black man was a 49-year-old white man named Shane Neal Brown, who had outstanding warrants for gun charges. The police already had a description of this white man, Shane Neal Brown, and even though they could clearly see that Shane Lee Brown was different in race, his middle name was different, his age was different, his height, they still arrested Shane Lee Brown anyway, and they booked him under the name Shane Neal Brown. They booked him under the name of the 49-year-old white man that they were looking for. As a result, Shane Lee Brown spent 6 days in jail pleading his innocence. The police, of course, tried to white-splain afterwards, claiming that Mr. Shane Lee Brown had a suspended driver's license and some other trivia, all of this in a pathetic attempt to dirty up the victim. But that wasn't what they arrested him on. They didn't arrest him on driving with a suspended license, so that lie falls flat. You can't justify an illegal arrest after the fact. The Las Vegas thugs also said that they've improved training procedures to prevent this from happening in the future. So of course they're falling back on the old standby, their standard go-to lie, because they know the white media will be counted on to repeat the lie, or at the very least they're not going to question it. Now, where are the trolls and clowns who always say, well, whatever the police do to a black person, it's training issue, it's a training issue, buddy. They always tell that lie, so I trust they'll be repeating it now, right? Police need to be trained to be able to distinguish the difference between a black person and a white one. Gee, given all the racist remarks the police constantly make, you would think they were experts on skin color, because that seems to be what they obsess over the most. This is just another in an endless string of examples that these violent attacks on black people are not happening by accident. It's happening because the police are targeting black people deliberately, and they know that the DAs aren't going to touch them, and neither will the courts. Citizens have to get real about this situation. The answer to police misconduct is 2020. That was the lesson from 2 years ago. When the public makes it clear that they will personally make certain the police get punished, then and only then do you suddenly see the DAs realize, oh, we can bring charges against them. If the people make it clear we're going to handle it, then the prosecutors will suddenly realize, oh, well, I just realized I can bring charges on this guy, and I can get him convicted too. It's up to the public to stop these criminals. When it comes to hate crimes, the police are left out of the stats. They're left out of the discussion altogether. But every incident like the one that happened to Donovan Johnson or Shane Lee Brown, these are hate crimes. They were done based solely on race and nothing else. The police can be caught on audio, video, and printout hurling racial slurs, saying they want to and have harmed or even murdered black people and did so intentionally, but the police are never included in the hate crime stats. And of course, the so-called authorities make it a point not to charge police with hate crimes. But as these two incidents and a countless number of others prove, you cannot have a valid conversation about hate crimes without also bringing the police into the discussion. Most of the perpetrators of hate crimes against black people are rarely arrested, and they almost never get charged with a hate crime, if they get charged at all. Remember Maya Ponsetto, the white Latina thug who attacked that black child in New York City? She got charged with a hate crime, but the corrupt, slimy Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg already said from the jump he was going to let her re-plea to a lower charge in 2 years. That way the hate crime charge could be removed from her record. He's saying this in front of the public, bold about it, because he wants those white donor dollars, and he knows this is how you get it. Make sure that the cash-fluid white donor class up in New York understand, oh, black people, they have no rights here, and if a black person gets attacked, I'm looking the other way. We're going to send a message. I'll help send the message. Now give me some money so I can go ahead and try to run for Senate or Congress or something. This is deliberate, open, anti-black hostility by the courts. This is a clear, open, undeniable policy in the American judicial system. When you see how consistently it happens, and that it happens everywhere, not just in a couple of hamlets somewhere in California or over in Las Vegas, but this happens coast to coast everywhere. That's how you know that there is a program at work here. When a black person is harmed, particularly by some white supremacist, then you blame the black person. Oh, what did the black person do to provoke the attack? Like they did with Shane Lee Brown. Or if they can't dirty up the victim, then they claim, well, it's a tragic confluence of events, but we really can't say that it's racial. It would just be so difficult to prove. Really, this was just a tragedy. Genetic immunity from law is what this is all about. The laws are not applied to some people, and it's pretty easy to see why. This is the white authorities protecting and encouraging anti-black hate crimes. Now, the hate crime statutes are on the books, but there's an open policy of refusing to use them when a black person is harmed. So a hate crime simultaneously doesn't exist and at the same time can be whatever the white authorities need it to be. It's become more of the white media's propaganda tool to manufacture a phony headline, a phony narrative that lets them claim the victims of hate crimes are somehow the perpetrators. I'm sure you've seen these wild headlines from time to time. And there's already audience of anti-black racists from across the color spectrum who will gladly play along with that particular lie. Take California as a case study. I had posted for you on Twitter that black people are only 6% of California's residents, but make up nearly half the targets of hate crimes in that state. And those aren't all white supremacists who are doing those attacks, by the way. A lot of so-called people of color are also engaging in this anti-black violence. That's the reality. But you wouldn't know it if you let the white media tell it. Meanwhile, every other week or so, we see some wild story where the white media claims that if there's a black teenager who got into a fist fight with a non-black person, why, that's a hate crime. They got charged with hate crime. See, that's a hate crime. This is the courts and the white media pushing an anti-black narrative. Psychotic anti-black racism is what this is. Hate crimes in America are on the rise, but the white media is deliberately and intentionally trying to take attention off of who's being attacked and who's doing the attacking. But we're not fooled. Hate crimes in this country do not affect everyone equally. Hate crimes in this country are literally as simple as black and white. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors. Justin Marcus, Antonio Daniels, Brian Walton, Kimberly Dooley, and Daryl Bledsoe. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.